The Terran Coalition vessel cut through the haze of Aurelian Prime's upper atmosphere like a splinter of steel in a sea of gold. Beneath its modest hull sprawled the Imperial capital, an endless continent of marble towers, crystalline bridges, and structures so vast they bent the horizon. Living spires pulsed with alien light, organic metal breathing as if the city itself were alive. Every design screamed power, wealth, eternity. It was built to remind visitors of their insignificance. Ambassador Elias Rourke stared out from the viewport, hands clasped loosely behind his back. His reflection showed a face marked by hard years, lines etched deep from battles fought and choices made when the skies above Earth had burned. He did not flinch at the grandeur below. Let the Empire flaunt its majesty, Earth had survived fire. Marble cities did not impress him. The ship shuddered as docking clamps seized it. Silence filled the cabin. Behind Rourke, aides shifted in their seats, anxious and pale. They were young, scholars, linguists, analysts, never hardened by war. They whispered about the Senate chamber, the thousands of alien eyes that would watch, the centuries of precedent stacked against them. Rourke turned, voice even. Remember why we're here. Not to ask, not to beg. We stand for Earth, nothing less. Keep your fear to yourselves. The ramp lowered. Heat and light from the docking bay bled into the vessel. The Terran delegation descended as one, plain black uniforms stark against the kaleidoscopic finery of the Empire's court functionaries. Dozens of species clustered nearby, some tall and insected, others scaled and hulking, some shimmering with bioluminescence. Conversations hushed as humans passed. Whispers rose. Primitive. Outworlders. The prey species. Rourke ignored them all. His boots struck the floor in steady rhythm, measured, unhurried. Each step echoed louder than the last until the chamber swallowed the sound. They entered the Imperial Senate. It was a cathedral of politics, an amphitheater spanning kilometers, tiers upon tiers of floating platforms occupied by delegates from hundreds of species. A dome of translucent crystal arched overhead, displaying the swirl of Aurelian's atmosphere. At the center, raised above all, sat the throne of council, where the presiding magistrates of the Empire waited like judges before a trial. The Terran delegation was ushered onto a single, small disk of metal, suspended in the void of the chamber. Surrounded, isolated, dwarfed. Exactly as intended. A voice boomed, magnified by unseen amplifiers. Representatives of Sol, you stand accused of hostile action against the lawful fleet of the Empire. Explain yourselves. The words rippled across the chamber in multiple tongues. A low murmur followed. The accusation was a script, well rehearsed, designed to paint humans as aggressors. Then Grand Legate Valer Threx rose. His figure loomed on a higher dais, tall, armored in ceremonial gold, eyes burning a cold amber. He had orchestrated the strike near Sol, Rourke knew. He had ordered fire upon Earth's skies. The scars of orbital bombardment still marred the cradle of humanity because of this creature. Threx's voice carried venom wrapped in ceremony. The so-called Terran Coalition, an upstart rabble clinging to a single sun, has committed the crime of arrogance. You destroyed vessels of the Empire, vessels that came to bring order. You repay guidance with blood. This cannot be tolerated. Laughter erupted across the chamber. Deep, rumbling tones from scaled throats, clicking amusement from chitinous maws, hissing derision from serpentine delegates. The ridicule rolled like thunder. To them, humanity was a curiosity, a loud insect daring to bite a predator. Rourke stood unmoving. He let the sound wash over him until it began to fade. When silence returned, he stepped forward. His voice was calm, quiet at first, but carried weight that silenced those nearest. You speak of arrogance. You speak of guidance. Yet your fleet did not descend on an outpost or a colony. You struck Earth. A ripple moved through the chamber. The word carried gravity. Most species surrendered after a border skirmish, bowed after a show of strength. Few resisted when the Empire demanded submission. None spoke of their homeworld as if it were something sacred. Rourke's gaze swept the tiers. You did not test our resolve on some distant frontier. You came to the world that birthed us, the world we would burn with ourselves before surrendering. You attacked our home? The chamber stilled. No laughter followed. Whispers returned, hushed, uncertain. Threx sneered, though his eyes narrowed. A sentimental declaration. Earth is dust in waiting, as countless worlds before. The Empire does not falter. Rourke held his stare. His reply cut without raising volume. Then you've never faced a species that remembers every scar, every fire, every fallen name. Earth is not dust. It is bedrock. Strike it, and you'll find the foundation does not crumble. It breaks the hand that smashes it. The silence deepened. Delegates exchanged glances, some frowning, some intrigued. The laughter was gone. Rourke did not press further. He let the words hang, let the chamber breathe the weight of them. He had not shouted, not raged. He had declared truth with the stillness of stone. A signal light blinked on the Terran platform, indicating their time had ended. The delegation would be dismissed, to await judgment, to endure the games of politics that would follow. Rourke inclined his head slightly, as if the exchange had been civil, and turned back to his aides. They followed him wordlessly, their expressions a mix of fear and awe. None had expected such composure, such defiance in the face of the Empire's grandeur. As they exited the chamber, the whispers of the Senate grew louder behind them. Not ridicule now. Not laughter. Something else. Doubt. Curiosity. A crack in the facade of certainty. For the first time in living memory, the Galactic Empire had been addressed not as masters, but as aggressors. And for the first time, they had not been answered with fear. The Senate chamber erupted the moment the Terran delegation withdrew to the edge of their platform. Voices thundered across the tiers, layered in dozens of tongues, some guttural, some chittering, others carried on vibrating air that rattled bones. They admit resistance! One delegate roared, a scaled giant with molten eyes. Purge them before their disease spreads. They are inconsequential, hissed another, her serpentine body coiled around a floating dais. A feral branch unfit for negotiation. Others argued over spoils, already speaking of humanity as though it were a carcass to be divided. The chamber swirled with contempt, the Terrans dismissed as an inconvenience. Ambassador Elias Rourke did not move. He let the storm rage, hands resting behind his back, expression unreadable. His aides shifted uneasily beside him, but he gave no signal for silence. He wanted them to speak, to reveal themselves in arrogance. At last, Grand Legate Valor Threx raised a clawed hand. The noise died. His amber gaze locked on Rourke, the weight of centuries of conquest behind it. You speak as though Earth matters, Threx said, voice amplified, deep and cold. A single world does not stand against the tide. Every species before you has bent or broken. Why should humans be different? Rourke stepped forward, his movement deliberate, measured. He spoke without haste. Because you did not strike a colony, Legate. You struck the root. A colony can be lost, forgotten, abandoned. A homeworld cannot. Every human carries it in their marrow. We bleed for it, die for it, endure for it. You thought us prey. Instead, you've bound us in purpose. The chamber murmured again, the words resonating in ways no one expected. Delegates leaned forward. Some studied Rourke with narrowed eyes, no longer laughing. Threx tilted his head, lips curling into something between mockery and curiosity. Purpose? You call annihilation purpose? We crushed fleets older than your species' first starship. We ground civilizations into dust while your kind still burned wood for warmth. Rourke's gaze did not falter. Perhaps. And perhaps that is why you failed to see what stands before you now. The others bent because they had forgotten how to stand. We remember. Earth taught us. Firestorms. Plagues. Wars that scarred continents. We outlasted all of it. You think a fleet in orbit frightens us? It only reminds us of what we've already survived. His words struck like steel. They were not shouted, not gilded with pomp, simply stated truth. Threx's eyes narrowed. Survival is not victory. No, Rourke replied softly. But it is the beginning of one. The tension coiled tighter. From another tier, a voice cut across the silence. A winged delegate, feathers glittering like metal, leaned forward. "Human?" she asked, tone less hostile, more curious. "If your world was struck and yet remains, how? We have reports of Imperial bombardment. Yet you stand here." Rourke allowed himself the faintest smile, though it held no warmth. "Because when the sky burned, we did not scatter. We fought. Every vessel we had, every weapon, every hand willing to fight was turned against the invaders. And when the fleet broke through, we turned rubble into cover, ruins into fortresses. We gave them nothing they could hold. They came expecting surrender. They found resistance. And they bled." The winged delegate fell silent. Across the chamber, whispers turned into low discussions, tones shifting from derision to caution. Rourke pressed on. "You see us as primitives. You mistake patience for weakness. But you miscalculated. You awakened something you cannot command. Unity. Resolve. A species that remembers every scar and adapts to each wound." Threx barked a laugh, sharp and cruel. "Grand words. Yet words do not shield you from fleets. They do not stop fire. What will you do when the Empire truly arrives in force? When our armadas blot out your sun?" Rourke's eyes sharpened. For a moment, the chamber quieted, waiting for his answer. "What will we do?" He let the silence stretch a breath. "We will fight until the void itself is filled with wreckage. We will bleed the Empire with every world you take, every ship you send. And when you grow tired of bleeding, when you realize conquest costs more than submission ever could, you will regret the day you chose Earth." His words landed like a strike. For several seconds, no one spoke. Delegates shifted uneasily. The echo of regret lingered like smoke in the vast chamber. Some lowered their eyes. Others studied the humans as if seeing them for the first time. Threx's mask of superiority did not break, but a shadow crossed his expression. The Grand Legate leaned forward, voice low, dangerous. "You overestimate yourselves, human. Defiance is not strength. It is the prelude to annihilation." Rourke's reply was ice. "Then learn what annihilation costs." The Senate erupted once more, but this time the voices carried a different timbre. Doubt. Concern. A flicker of respect. The Terran delegation had not begged, not pleaded, they had declared. And the chamber, vast and ancient, had listened. Rourke stepped back, signaling the end of his address. He said nothing further, letting the chamber drown in its own noise. His aides glanced at him, eyes wide, uncertain if he had won ground or doomed them all. As the Senate session adjourned, one thought weighed heavy in every corner of the chamber. Humanity was not behaving as prey. They were something else. Something dangerous. The Senate chamber emptied slowly, its vast tiers dissolving into private platforms and corridors of polished crystal. Delegates dispersed in clusters of hushed arguments, their voices carrying tones of doubt the Empire had not heard in centuries. Whispers lingered like smoke. Humans did not kneel. Ambassador Elias Rourke left the chamber with his aides in silence. Guards in gilded armor guided them through vaulted corridors where every surface gleamed with imperial grandeur. Statues of past conquerors watched from alcoves, stone eyes filled with contempt for all who passed. At the end of the hall, the delegation was ushered into a private chamber. The doors sealed with a resonant thud. Waiting inside stood Grand Legate Valer Threx. The aides stiffened, but Rourke met the alien's gaze with the same steady calm he had carried since arrival. Threx dismissed the guards with a flick of his clawed hand. Only the two of them remained. "You speak boldly before the Senate," Threx said, voice low, each word sharpened. "But bold words are dust when the fleet comes again. Your kind will burn, and no speech will change that." Rourke stepped closer, the polished floor echoing under his boots. His tone was even, controlled, but carried an edge of steel. "Your fleet already came. And what returned from Seoul? Nothing." Threx's eyes narrowed, a flicker of irritation breaking through his veneer. "You ambushed them. A single engagement proves nothing. The Empire adapts." "Ambush?" Rourke's lips curved into a thin, humorless smile. No. We met you head-on, with everything we had, ships older than your archives, weapons held together with welding and faith. Yet your armada fell. Not one vessel escaped to boast of victory. You expected prey. You found a species that does not surrender. Threx's jaw tightened, but he forced a sneer. Even if that were true, even if you destroyed a fleet, you cannot withstand the Empire entire. We are infinite compared to you. You are a fraction of a fraction. Rourke let the words settle, then spoke, quiet but cutting. Numbers are not infinity when each costs more than you can pay. We don't need to defeat you everywhere. We only need to bleed you until every conquest is a graveyard. That is the weight you fail to understand. Humans don't yield. We endure until endurance itself becomes a weapon. The chamber fell silent. The two stood locked in a clash of presence. No weapons, no armies, only will against will. Threx broke the silence first, his voice laced with scorn. You speak of bleeding the Empire as though you grasp the scale of what you face. Do you know how many systems we command? How many species we have broken? Rourke's eyes hardened. Enough to grow complacent. Enough to forget that strength without struggle is hollow. You've ruled so long you no longer remember what it means to fight for survival. We have never forgotten. That is why you fear us, though you'll never admit it aloud. For the first time, Threx faltered. His expression betrayed the briefest flicker of unease, quickly masked beneath disdain. He stepped closer, towering, voice like iron. Fear you? No, human. Pity you. You bring your species to ruin with pride. Rourke did not move back. His reply came cold, measured, absolute. Call it pride if you like. I call it memory. You attacked Earth. And for that, every human, every ship, every hand that can raise a weapon, will rise. You will learn that some homes are never taken, only defended until the last defender falls. And when the Empire counts the cost, you will regret the day you thought us weak. The words cut deeper than any blade. They echoed in the chamber long after Rourke's voice fell silent. Threx's hands clenched at his sides, claws scraping against gilded armor. He wanted to lash out, to crush the insolence where it stood, but he could not. Not here, not now, not when the Senate itself had begun to listen. His silence was the closest thing to defeat the Grand Legate had ever shown. Rourke turned without another word. The doors opened, his aides falling into step behind him, faces pale but burning with something new, pride, resolve, belief. They left the chamber as calmly as they had entered, but the air behind them was heavier, charged with the unspoken truth that lingered in Threx's silence. Through the corridors, alien officials stared as the humans passed. Not with laughter this time. With calculation. With caution. The ripples had begun. At the docking bay, the Terran vessel waited, dwarfed by the colossal warships of the Empire. As the delegation boarded, Rourke paused at the ramp, looking back across the endless city of marble and crystal. The Empire had power. It had scale. But it did not have what humanity carried now, unity forged in fire, resolve tempered by survival. Inside, his youngest aide whispered, almost afraid to break the quiet. Ambassador, did they believe you? Rourke fastened his harness as the vessel lifted, eyes never leaving the shrinking skyline. His answer was steady. They don't have to believe me. They only have to doubt themselves. That's the first step to losing. The ship broke through the clouds, engines burning toward the void. Aurelian Prime fell away behind them, its opulent towers shrinking to specks of light. In the Senate halls, whispers still spread like cracks in ancient stone. Some mocked. Some dismissed. But others felt the tremor of something the Empire had long forgotten. A species that did not bow. A species that remembered every wound. A species that would not stop. For the first time in living memory, the Empire hesitated.